with the discount rate and how lowering the discount rate or raising the discount rate will affect GDP and the economy. And I've got 5 steps. So I want to go over the 5 steps, and we're going to go over basically the 2 problems. The first problem is unemployment is high, and we want to lower unemployment, and we want to raise GDP. So the 5 steps basically on this are to define the discount rate, and the discount rate is the interest rate that member banks are charged by the Fed. So I just do that so everybody understands this is what the discount rate. And then second step is what is the discount rate today, so get what that is. It's 0.750. And now, knowing that we basically need to stimulate the economy, we want to raise GDP and fight unemployment, we are going to lower the discount rate. So we're going to go from 0.75 to 0.50. And then with this, banks now have gotten cheaper cost of money. Banks can now pass on the savings and the lower rates to their customers, so they can lower personal loan rates, they can lower line of credit rates or credit card rates. So step 4 is bank will be able to increase loans. They'll be able to increase the size of the loans. They'll be able to qualify more people. People can get larger loans. More people can qualify. So basically borrowing is easy. And then step 5 is basically a summation or a conclusion statement. Therefore, if we lower the discount rate from 0.75 to 0.50, borrowing is easy, consumers spend more money, businesses expand, employment increases, and consumers spend more money. And that's the whole goal: consumers spend more money. Down here in the GDP formula, C is actually increased. So this is what we do in the 5 steps if we're going to fight unemployment or fight or raise GDP. Now, what if we were going to fight inflation and lower GDP? Well, we do the exact opposite, but let me go through the steps. So we're basically going to decrease GDP, and we're going to fight inflation. The discount rate is the interest rate that member banks are charged by the Fed. That stays the same. Step 2, the rate is 0.750. That is what it is currently today. That stays the same. But what we do is we don't lower the discount rate. We're going to raise it. We're going to raise it to 1.0. So we're going to raise the rate to 1.0. And then here, banks now will actually they'll give fewer loans. People will get smaller loans. So banks will give fewer loans, they'll give smaller loans, less people qualify, so borrowing is more difficult. Now, on the conclusion, if we raise the discount rate from 0.750 to 1.00, then we've got borrowing is difficult. Borrowing is hard or difficult. Consumers spend less money, so consumers spend less. Businesses shrink, can be postponed expansion, can get smaller, shrink. Employment will decrease. So employment decreases, unemployment increases. Consumers spend less. So consumers spend less money because we raised the discount rate and banks increased their rates. Less people got loans, less people borrowed, less people purchased things. So we have that, and then C and GDP will actually decrease. So C and GDP actually decrease. Now, with the formula for the reserve requirement and T-bills, there's actually a way to increase the money supply by a certain %. And we do know that if you increase the money supply 1%, GDP goes up 1%. If we decrease the money supply 2%, GDP goes down 2%. And this is M2 money supply. With the discount rate, it's very low right now, so we know that it will stimulate borrowing, but how much borrowing, not necessarily sure. I normally will have you guys give an estimate of how it will affect C. We know if we lower the discount rate, it'll raise consumer spending. You can say maybe quarter of a percent, 0.5%, because we didn't do that big of a change. You could do the change in spending times the multiplier and do it that way. We could figure it out a couple different ways. I will help you in class in figuring out what the effect on C is. Just use these 5 steps to actually explain to the class, by lowering the discount rate, this is what will happen to C, and then we'll use probably the multiplier to work with the change in C. So I hope everybody understands this. If you have any questions, feel free to ask, and thanks a lot and have a good night.